This evening, first, Guyanese social media activist Melissa Atwell Holder, known as Melly Mel, is granted bond by a U.S. immigration court. As her supporters raise thousands online, questions remain about whether her arrest was politically motivated. Plus, Vice President Bharrat Jagdeo reaffirms the government's toll-free bridge initiative, promising support for Linden and all Guyanese commuters. But is political tension threatening the rollout? Also, the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation responds to the tragic death of firefighter Voshaun Manbodh. A new report rules out negligence, but reveals serious gaps in the hospital's trauma care system. Meanwhile, the noose tightens in the U.S. sanctions probe. Attorney General Anil Nandlall says local law enforcement now has enough evidence to move forward with actions against the Mohameds and suspended Permanent Secretary Mae Thomas. Finally, tensions continue to mount in the Essequibo region as Venezuela plans elections in the oil-rich territory. Guyana takes the battle for sovereignty to the world's highest court. Stay tuned, these stories and more tonight on Headline News Update. Welcome to this broadcast of Channel 2's Headline News Update for March 28, 2025. I'm Bibi Bacchus. Thank you for joining us. First up, today, Guyanese social media activist Melissa Atwell Holder, known as Melly Mel, was granted a bond of US $7,500 by a U.S. immigration court, allowing her to be released pending further proceedings of her immigration status. The decision comes as Atwell Holder, who entered the U.S. in 2022 and has been married to U.S. citizen Paul Holder for the past 2 years, continues her adjustment of status application. The judge upheld her lawyer's representation, noting that she posed no threat to the community or the United States and is not considered a flight risk. The Department of Immigration's principal legal advisor confirmed that her status has been verified and an approved I-130 petition and a pending I-45 application support her case. The court has ordered that Holder's attorney submit copies of the I-485 application to the court no later than April 18, 2025. Holder, a vocal critic of the People's Progressive Party civic administration on issues of corruption, faces allegations from opposition parties that her arrest was politically motivated. Several protests were held against the government at the Square of the Revolution since Holder's arrest and incarceration. However, the government maintains that her case was solely an immigration matter and that the protest was against the U.S. government. An online fundraiser in support of Holder has raised nearly $40,000, reinforcing community backing as her case is now transferred to a New York court for any potential removal proceedings. In other news, Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Anil Nandlall announced on Thursday that the Guyana Police Force and the Guyana Revenue Authority had gathered sufficient evidence to begin taking action related to U.S. sanctions imposed on businessmen Azruddin and Nazar Mohamed and Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Labor, Mae Thomas. Speaking on the sidelines of an event at State House, Nandlall explained that information exchanges with U.S. law enforcement have provided local authorities with a significant volume of documents, data, and evidence.
They have sufficient volume of evidence, information, data, documents, whatever you wish to call it, to proceed to act upon it. GRA, I suppose, will act upon the allegations of tax evasion. The Guyana Police Force, through its appropriate departments, will act upon other aspects of the data or evidence which they feel presents an opportunity to activate certain processes. So that will take place shortly. There have been a process ongoing for several months now, and we have made that public. And that process have thus far yielded a sufficient volume of information that the tax authorities feel and the law enforcement agencies in Guyana feel provide sufficient basis for them to begin their statutory processes.
Nandlall detailed that while the GRA will address tax evasion allegations, the police will handle other aspects of the case. When asked about the possibility of charges against Permanent Secretary Thomas, who had been on leave since last year, Nandlall expressed confidence that the agencies would act objectively based on the evidence.
I have no doubt that their approach will be one that would be objective and would be evidence-driven. I have no reason to think otherwise.
This announcement follows previous reports that the U.S. Treasury's OFAC sanctioned the Mohameds over allegations of tax evasion, corruption, and gold smuggling. Thomas was accused of misusing her position to grant government contracts to the businessmen. The U.S. Department of Justice has responded to Guyana's request for further information, and charges are expected to be filed soon. This is according to Nandlall. On a different note, Vice President and General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party, Dr. Bharrat Jagdeo, announced on Thursday that the government is committed to working with the mining town of Linden to address concerns over its recent decision to implement a toll-free system for bridges in regions 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10. Dr. Jagdeo acknowledged opposition criticism at his weekly press conference on Thursday.
The president's announcement has caused some reaction from the PNC. They don't want the free toll in Linden, claiming that it will affect their revenue, and that the government didn't discuss this with them as yet. So let me tell you that the president has already announced that all the people of the country will benefit from this. The people in Berbice, Region 5 and 6, the people in 4 and 3 who use the bridge, and also the people in Region 10, or anyone else who would use the bridge.
Dr. Jagdeo emphasized that the toll-free initiative is designed to benefit all Guyanese regardless of their region. He added that the government would meet with the Town Council in Linden.
However, we will meet with the Town Council in Linden. We will meet with them to discuss this matter. Because we don't want them to claim that the limited services that they provide to people, blame the government again for that. So that's why we'll meet with them to make sure they don't distort what's going on.
The Vice President stressed that the government will follow all protocols to ensure the monumental initiative is not marred by controversy. The toll-free policy, which will be effective August 1st, covers the Demerara Harbour Bridge, the Berbice River Bridge, and the Wismer Bridge in Region 10. President Dr. Mohamed made the original announcement on Sunday at a large gathering at Babu John in Port Moran, Curtin, stating that the move will ease travel and reduce financial burdens on thousands of commuters. In August last year, the president promised that the new Demerara River crossing, Berbice River Bridge, and the new Wismer Mackenzie Bridge would all be toll-free, reinforcing the government's commitment to benefiting all citizens across the country. Stick around when we return. AFC accuses PPPC of misleading U.S. Secretary of State Rubio on Heroes Highway, and Vice President Jagdeo promises NIS relief for thousands of citizens.
Sneakily with a gift of sight from Modern Optical Services. Let our professional team examine and prescribe what's best for your eyes. Common smiles make fashionable faces. See us for a full line of optical services, including brand name and prescription eyewear. Modern Optical Services. 316 Mill Street, Georgetown. Telephone 226-1082.
Good girl, forget things.
What's the problem, Granny? I want money for do a surgery. I was dancing and I fall and fracture my hip.
If you need some quick money,
you should check Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop.
Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop, Lot 238 South Road Border, Georgetown. Get jewelry made to order in just 72 hours. We also accept vehicles. Lender's, best rates, longest payback period.
Boys, I get through. Plus, I could dance again.
Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop.
Furnishing your home or office has never been easier. Here at Kissoon's, our inventory of locally made and imported furniture, offered at amazing prices, will leave you wanting more. From vinyl, floor rugs and carpets, bedroom, dining and living room sets, mattresses, pillows, office desk, chairs and filing cabinets, outdoor benches and tables. We have a piece of furniture for every room imaginable in your home or office. Check out our flagship store at Industrial Site Rijnveld or one of our branches in New Amsterdam, Port Morant, Riverton and Camp Street. Kissoon's Furniture, furnishing homes for over 50 years.
Welcome back. The Alliance for Change has formally written to U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, raising concerns over alleged misinformation provided by the People's Progressive Party civic government during his recent visit to Guyana. According to AFC leader Nigel Hughes, the government falsely claimed that the Heroes Highway was constructed under the former APNU-AFC administration, when in fact it was completed under the PPPC tenure.
Our president misled the Secretary of State yesterday to cause him to make a statement about the highway, which was not built by the Chinese, which was not built by the previous administration, which I believe the Secretary of State accurately described as concussion highway. But it puts the country in a very dangerous position because now the United States will probably receive some sort of low-level protest from China because the Secretary of State went to town in China in relation to that road. And clearly he had been fed information because the only person he met with was the president, by the president, that indicated that, first of all, the road was built by the Chinese. Two, that it was built during the last regime. Both of those are incorrect. And while the Secretary of State made that statement, the president did not have the decency to say, Mr. Secretary of State, that's not quite correct. And this is about responsibility. And here we have the United States Secretary of State confirming the absolutely poor quality of the construction done by this government. And I believe, if I quote him correctly, he says it was better we had it down.
The AFC also criticized claims that the project was built by the Chinese, which led Secretary Rubio to denounce China's alleged involvement publicly. However, AFC asserts that the highway was constructed by contractors linked to the PPPC and that the road's poor quality was evident, as Rubio himself commented on its roughness. The AFC argues that this alleged deception cast doubt on the credibility of the PPPC engagements with the U.S. and other foreign partners. The party has urged the U.S. State Department to scrutinize statements made by the Guyanese government and has called on citizens to demand transparency and accountability in governance. On a different note, the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation has acknowledged the findings of an independent investigative panel regarding the death of firefighter Voshaun Manbodh, who succumbed to his injuries days after battling a devastating fire at Mae's school in Sobrianville. 27-year-old Manbodh was among 4 other firefighters seriously injured on March 5th when part of the burning structure collapsed on them. He suffered severe injuries, including fractures to his neck, which impaired his motor function. He died at the Georgetown Public Hospital 4 days after the incident, with his family later alleging negligence and delays in his treatment. The investigative panel determined that Manbodh's death was not solely due to his injuries, but resulted from multiple bleeding ulcers, a known complication of trauma combined with underlying chronic conditions. The panel also found no evidence supporting claims that he fell from his hospital bed, as verified by nurses and other patients. While the report did not indicate wrongdoings, it highlighted systemic gaps in trauma management, interdisciplinary communication, and discharge protocols. In response, GPAC has announced several reforms, including improved case coordination, better patient monitoring, enhanced medical training, and stricter discharge policies. Manbodh's passing had sparked widespread grief within the firefighting community, with Home Affairs Minister Robinson Ben assuring his family that a full investigation would be conducted. The Ministry of Home Affairs had also pledged a comprehensive probe into both the fire and the circumstances surrounding his death. Meanwhile, the 3 other firefighters injured in the blaze are recovering. The early morning fire also destroyed the school, displacing approximately 1,000 students. Moving on Thursday, Vice President Dr. Bharrat Jagdeo announced that thousands of Guyanese who contributed to the National Insurance Scheme but did not qualify for a pension will soon receive financial relief. At his weekly press conference on Thursday at Freedom House, Dr. Jagdeo emphasized the government's commitment to addressing long-standing issues with the NIS, particularly in Berbice.
We've just put in the budget $10 billion that will give every NIS contributor between 500 contributions and 749 who didn't qualify to get a pension. And this is from the 1970s all the way to now. Once they will now get a check in 2 months, and it will be a substantial sum of money. They will get back some of the contribution that they made to NIS that they didn't get all these years because they didn't qualify for a pension. We put that in the budget. So that will help about maybe 7,000-8,000, and I'm just calling a number from what I saw in the past. It could be much more people who have been struggling to try to get a pension but could not get a pension because according to the law they didn't make the contributions, or somebody did not pay their contributions in.
The Vice President assured citizens that the government is actively working to resolve complaints and improve the system.
We've already helped nearly 10,000 people who've had NIS problems in the past few years, who have submitted their names, etc., and had difficulties at the NIS, 10,000, but you probably have another 10,000 out there who have issues. So I said, Ashni Singh will come. He will go to the NIS office, bring his staff, and work with people.
Beyond NIS, Dr. Jagdeo outlined several key government initiatives in the Berbice region aimed at improving infrastructure, agriculture, and employment. He noted that all local government bodies in Berbice have received excavators, and funding for community development has increased significantly. Additionally, the government is investing in garbage collection, road improvements, and modernized agricultural projects, including an agro-industrial complex spanning 62,000 acres in Skeldon.
This year, they have received, the subvention has gone from $5 million to $20 million to assist with the cemeteries, the internal drains, and garbage collection. We're buying compactors for all the towns in the country. So when they complain about garbage or the cemetery overgrown, like the people in Berbice did again, we are providing solutions and giving them more resources to tackle the problem.
The Vice President reaffirmed the administration's approach to problem solving, stating that public complaints help shape government solutions. He also highlighted the government's ongoing efforts to create jobs, noting that over 10,000 new opportunities have been generated in Berbice alone since 2020. Don't go away after the break. Hegseth visiting the Philippines, U.S. Defense Secretary meeting over China, and China responds sharply to strengthening U.S.-Guyana ties.
Furnishing your home or office has never been easier. Here at Kissoon's, our inventory of locally made and imported furniture, offered at amazing prices, will leave you wanting more. From vinyl, floor rugs and carpets, bedroom, dining and living room sets, mattresses, pillows, office desk, chairs and filing cabinets, outdoor benches and tables. We have a piece of furniture for every room imaginable in your home or office. Check out our flagship store at Industrial Site Rijnveld or one of our branches in New Amsterdam, Port Morant, Riverton and Camp Street. Kissoon's Furniture, furnishing homes for over 50 years.
sneakily with a gift of sight from modern optical services. Let our professional team examine and prescribe what's best for your eyes. Common smiles make fashionable faces. See us for a full line of optical services, including brand name and prescription eyewear. Modern Optical Services, 316 Middle Street, Georgetown. Telephone 226-1082.
Good girl forget things.
What's the problem, Granny?
I want money for borrow for those surgery. I was dancing and I fall and fracture my hip.
If you need some quick money, you should check Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop.
Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop, lot 238 South Road Border, Georgetown. Get jewelry made to order in just 72 hours. We also accept vehicles. Lender's, best rates, longest payback period.
Boys, I get through. Plus, I could dance again.
Lender's Jewelry and Pawn Shop.
Welcome back. Now we take a look at what's happening in the region and around the world. China has criticized the strengthening U.S.-Guyana relations following the visit of U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio to Georgetown. President Ali pledged preferential treatment to the U.S., citing support against Venezuela territorial threats. In response, China's embassy emphasized its long-standing contributions, including a $1.4 billion in trade and major infrastructure projects. Rubio, while in Suriname, mocked Chinese-built infrastructure in Guyana, calling it terrible and joking it nearly caused concussion. Meanwhile, the resource-rich Essequibo region remains disputed between Guyana and Venezuela, with tensions escalating since oil discoveries. Venezuela plans to hold elections in Essequibo in May, a move Guyana calls a sovereignty violation and has challenged at the International Court of Justice. Al Jazeera's Teresa Bow reports.
This is the Essequibo region in western Guyana, 159,000 square kilometers filled with vast natural resources. It is also subject to a long territorial dispute between Guyana and Venezuela.
Here we refer to
Colin Henry is part of the St. Ignatians Amerindian community. He is concerned about Venezuelan claims over the land.
I firmly believe it belongs to Guyana, right? But after oil would have been discovered, is then you find, to me, is when Venezuela got so interested in trying to occupy the Essequibo, right?
Henry used to live close to the border with Venezuela, but left when the United Kingdom sent a warship to Guyana 2 years ago. The dispute dates back to 1899, when an international tribunal ruled in favor of British Guyana. But in 1962, Venezuela rejected the ruling. Now it wants to take it a step further by including the Essequibo in the upcoming legislative elections.
Guyana appealed to the International Court of Justice for an order to prevent the Venezuelan elections here in the Essequibo in May. Venezuela says they will elect a governor and 8 legislators from this region. Guyana says this is a violation of their sovereignty.
In the past decade, Guyana began developing its oil industry and has rapidly transformed the country's economy. Much of it happened with investment from the U.S. oil company ExxonMobil. President Nicolás Maduro, a close Russia ally, says the oil is coming from a region that belongs to Venezuela.
The government of Guyana has entered into a spiral of war against Venezuela, and they think they can get away with it. That's why it's completely accurate to call the president of Guyana the Zelensky of the Caribbean. He's a true Zelensky.
Maduro's claims are a concern for many of those living in the Essequibo.
Related to wars, we see how it begins, like in particular Russia and the other areas. We see how it starts, and then we see the escalation. So of course we are very much concerned with that.
The ruling by the International Court of Justice is not expected until next year, and while tensions are likely to escalate ahead of the legislative elections in Venezuela, those living here are confident the territory will remain Guyanese. Teresa Bo, Al Jazeera, Essequibo region, Guyana.
Internationally, French President Emmanuel Macron hosted the leaders of nearly 30 countries and NATO and European Union chiefs in Paris on Thursday for the third such summit of the so-called Coalition of the Willing, aimed at strengthening Kyiv's hand and its military as it pushes for a ceasefire with Moscow. Al Jazeera's Natasha Butler reports.
Warm greeting for Ukraine's president at the Elysee Palace. French President Emmanuel Macron hosting Western allies for a summit on Ukraine's security. Leaders agreed to increase military aid for Ukraine, rearm the continent, and ruled out lifting sanctions on Russia, something Moscow's demanding as a precondition for a ceasefire.
The time is not right for lifting sanctions of any kind. There can be no policy of lifting sanctions before peace is clearly established.
Should peace be established, Macron said allies were firming up plans for security guarantees for Ukraine, including deploying troops, something Russia vehemently opposes. Leaders also agreed on the need for a European-led military mission to be deployed to Ukraine after a possible ceasefire. The idea, said Macron, is that they wouldn't be peacekeepers, but a force that could dissuade Russia from attacking Ukraine or elsewhere in Europe in the future. After the meeting, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer left with Zelensky for further talks. The UK and France have been at the forefront of European efforts to support Kyiv.
We will be ready to operationalise a peace deal whenever its precise shape turns out to be. And we will work together to ensure Ukraine's security.
Peace, though, said Ukraine's leader, still seems far away.
That is crucial that everybody understood and understand that Russia for today doesn't want any kind of peace.
The Elysee says Macron spoke to US President Donald Trump on the phone before the summit, a sign that despite crumbling transatlantic relations, Europe is still keen to keep the United States on side. Natasha Butler, Al Jazeera, Paris.
Finally, the US, Philippines and Japan have blustered ties in recent years because of what they say deemed to be increasingly aggressive action by China in the South China Sea. Al Jazeera's Barnaby Liu explains why the waterway has become a controversial issue.
It's one of the world's most critical waterways. The South China Sea straddles coastal states in Southeast Asia all the way to China, all with overlapping territorial claims. But with half of the world's merchant ships passing through it, countries outside the region say they also have a stake. The United States has ramped up its military presence in the region, particularly in the Philippines, angering Beijing. But Manila says how it builds up its defenses is its business, and is doing so to protect its fishermen and potential resources. The South China Sea is believed to hold an estimated 11 billion barrels of oil and trillions of cubic meters of natural gas. It's also where a tenth of the world's fish stocks is sourced. Ahead of U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's first trip to Manila, the Philippine government accused the Chinese Coast Guard of cordoning off the contested Scarborough Shoal. Last month, it said a Chinese Navy helicopter flew within 3 meters of a Philippine patrol plane.
If their desire is to show strength and show to the Philippines that we're not backing down and stop us from resupplying our fishermen or encouraging our fishermen to fish near the shoal, that's not going to happen.
China, which claims nearly the entire South China Sea, says the Philippines, along with so-called non-regional countries, is risking provocations.
The Philippines has persistently infringed upon China's rights and provoked China, and some non-regional countries have continued to stir up trouble, making the South China Sea unstable.
The two sides did come to an agreement last year for the Philippines to resupply its troops at the Second Thomas Shoal, but analysts say further agreements like this aren't likely soon.
That July provisional arrangement hasn't also to do with the fact that there was a serious incident, but also there has been quite a bit of pressure on Beijing and Manila in the run-up to the ASEAN summit.
The best-case scenario, analysts say, is likely to be a strategic stalemate. That means the continuing presence of Philippine and Chinese vessels in parts of the South China Sea, both countries claim. And it looks certain that the new Trump administration will want to ensure that American warships aren't leaving either. Barnaby Liu, Al Jazeera, Manila.
This brings us to the end of our regional and global news coverage. Up next is the 3D weather forecast. And that's it to be to Headline News for this Friday evening. As we take our leave, we invite you to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. We will be off for the weekend, but you can tune in on Monday at 7 p.m. for more news. Until then, please take care of yourself and each other and do have a wonderful weekend.